I'm using my ABC stencils to mark the panel on this quilt. The first thing I did was I marked a center line, 3.5 inches down the center of each panel. And this is a full line stencil ultimate marking pencil. It'll iron off. I run it through a sharpener to keep it nice and sharp. And then I have my botanical stencil. I'm only going to use the leaf on this one. So what I do is I put the center line on the center line, take my pounce pad, swipe it over. You don't pounce it, you don't bang it, you swipe it over, and I get that design. Then I'm going to flip it over because I want one going to the left, one going to the right. That's my choice. You can choose to have yours lined up if you like. So all the way down the center, I'm lining the center line on the center line that I drew and marking to the left, to the right, to the left, to the right. And I only mark one panel at a time. If I mark the whole quilt at once, my hands are going to make this chalk wear off. And any chalk that doesn't wear off can come off with a microfiber cloth or with an iron. I'm using an iron away powder. So I have my machine threaded with some really pretty variegated thread that matches my charm squares. This is a 50 weight 2D thread from Wonderfill. I'm not sure of the color name, but it's a real pretty one. And then I have a 60 weight polyester thread in the bobbin that is a solid color. So yes, I have cotton in the top, polyester in the bobbin. I have a 50 weight on the top and a 60 weight on the bottom. They're not the same thread, and that works. The reason I choose a thinner thread on the bobbin is because I get more yardage on there and don't have to change my bobbin as often. So I now have, I'm not worried about about knots. I started in my batting, and I'm just going to stitch onto the quilt because I'll bind over those stitches and I won't require a knot. Getting out my Batt Scooters. They're going to help me push the quilt so that I don't get hand fatigue or arm fatigue here. And I'm going to quilt from the top to the bottom following this stencil. When I'm not stitching on the stencil line, it won't matter because the line will go away and no one will be able to judge me. If I'm stitching this on a long arm machine, I will stitch it left to right. I will mark it left to right and load it left to right, and I will only mark it whatever is showing on the machine at the time. I'm not going to mark it before I load it onto the long arm. I have my machine set to a medium speed so that I can put my foot all the way down on the pedal and use it as an on-off switch. I don't want to have to worry about, oh, my foot's going too fast, too slow, too fast, too slow, what am I doing? Because I'm also trying to control my hands. I just use the foot pedal as an on-off switch. I held my breath till I got there. Can stop at that first curve. Now, when I was stitching the curve, I was looking at the end of the curve while I was stitching and trusting that my hands would get me there. If I stitch very slowly and try to follow that line, it'll look like there is something other than iced tea in my water bottle because it will be really a ragged line. I'm now going to stitch the leaf up, and I can pause in that corner. I'm going to come back down and then make my vein. Now it's time to reverse it. I'm obviously choosing to use a very bright thread so that you can see it on camera and because I like the look of it. But I've been quilting, machine quilting, for 30 years. if you are intimidated by someone seeing your stitches using a high contrast thread, do this in a matching thread, no pressure. And also, if you want to use the exact same thread on the top and bobbin, that absolutely works. I prefer not to, but I have done that. For years and years I did that. And now to the left. So I stitched right into the batting, and I'm not going to worry about knots. I have a scissors button on my sewing machine that I very rarely use because I like to make my knots myself. But since they don't matter on this quilt, I'm going to use my scissor button and pull the quilt out. So let's be harsh and judgmental, shall we? I missed a line here. You can see the line and the sewing aren't near each other. I missed it here. I missed it. You can just watch it as it goes. It is not on. So when you look at your quilt and go, mine is no good, I want you to remember, mine doesn't look stellar at this stage either. Once I remove the markings though, it'll look great. This is even a little wobbly and wiggly. Where's right here? I'm going to do all of my rows the same way. I finished stitching the vines and the leaves in my panels. And this is where your opinion comes into play for your quilt. I believe that more quilting is better. than less quilting. Some people like less quilting, some people like more. There is some space left over on the side here that I'd like to put some quilting in, and I'm going to do something pretty simple. I've changed to my walking foot, and I'm just going to stitch a 1/4 inch line. You could do a 1/2 inch line down each side to kind of limit that unquilted space. I have my machine set at 3mm stitch length, starting out in the batting. I do use Batt Scooters to help move, even when I have my walking foot on. My walking foot is on, my feed dogs are up, and I'm going to stitch down. Now that that side's done, I'm going to move over and quilt the other side of each of the panels. It's now time to quilt the charm squares. I am going to quilt using a ruler. This is a 3-inch Handi Quilter slice template. It's just an arc. I like it because it's narrow and fits well in my hand. Handi Quilter templates are 1/4 inch high, which means they work on all long arms and high shank machines. If you have a low shank machine or another machine, this wouldn't work for you. But you can get any curve. It can be part of a circle. It could be an arc. But you're going to need to get the right foot for your machine, the right ruler foot for your machine, because they're specific to each machine. And then you're going to need to talk to your machine manufacturer about what height rulers you need to get. This is a high shank machine, so it will work for me. Before I get started, there's a little problem I have here, and it's called my binding seam allowance. So I'm going to stitch continuous curve around here, but I need to make sure that my continuous curve is stitching a curve from corner to corner to corner to corner. And I need to make sure that that doesn't end up under the binding. So to remind myself, I have some 1/4 inch masking tape. And I put this on the edge of a lot of my quilts just to remind me not to stitch into my binding area. And if I stitch through the tape, because I will stitch through the tape right now, it perforates it and it peels right away. So let me move the foot back up. I'm now in position to start. And when I hold the ruler on my home sewing machine, I can hold it in my left hand, my right hand, it doesn't matter, except it does because I need the curve to go this way, which means it's on the left side. When I'm stitching this on a long arm machine, I have to hold it in my non-dominant hand because I'm going to move the machine with my dominant hand. So I'm going to start with the ruler next to the foot and rotate it until there's a 1/4 of an inch distance between the seam and where my ruler is, because my foot is a 1/4 of an inch and it'll bring the needle to the point where I want it to end. So I'm going to hold on to the ruler with my left hand, and it has ruler grip on it, so that when I push the ruler, it pushes the fabric. If I don't have the ruler grip on it, I can push the ruler and it'll slide along the fabric, like so. If I have the ruler grip on it, it will push the fabric. This ruler grip is called Handi grip from Handi Quilter, and if you put a piece on and your ruler still slides, put another piece on, or another, as many as you need to keep it from moving. So there's my 1/4 of an inch, and I have my Batt Scooter in my other hand to help me move the fabric. So now I can take a deep breath and take a rest. And now I'm going to turn the ruler this way, leaving a 1/4 of an inch on the far right over here. And I am going to go upside down, make a smiley face curve. And then back down the left side. And I'm going to do that all the way down. bottom and stopped stitching a 1/4 inch in from the binding. Now I'm just going to carry that thread through to the batting and cut my thread. I could finish this by going back up and up, but I can't see what's behind the needle very easily on a home sewing machine. So what I'm going to do is start over at the top. I'm going to stitch across the top and then down, 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 down to finish it. I'll finish all of the rows of continuous curve the same way. Please go to debbiebrownquilts.com, subscribe to my newsletter for more information about free scrap quilting patterns and machine quilting videos and classes.